Hey guys. Yesterday I went to the Military Entrance Processing Station in Springfield, Massachusetts, also known as MEPS, and I felt like when I was prepping to go up there, I watched a couple of videos that were about other people's experiences at MEPS, and I got some value out of that. But a lot of what I saw were people who were going enlisted, or it was guys, or something, something a little bit different, and I wanted to kind of share my experience in case somebody could relate a little bit more to mine. I was going up there to be a naval officer candidate, and so my experience was a little bit different. I met with my recruiter, and we filled out this whole form like a couple of weeks before I went, and basically it asks you about your health history, it asks you about your criminal history, it asks you about any sort of substances that you've ever used, whether it's like over the counter or if it's an illegal substance or anything like that, and you just check off any boxes, like you check off all the boxes that you just say no to whatever you haven't done, and you say yes to anything that does apply to you in some way. So for example, I've had a daughter, so I was in the hospital so that I could give birth to her. And so one of the questions is, have you ever been hospitalized for anything? And so I put yes, and then anything that you say yes to, you write down in this little box. So for me, I'm older, and so I've had more things that have happened to me or that I've gone through or whatever. And so there were more things for me to check yes on. So I had a little bit more to write down. I already have some of my medical records, so that also expedited a few things. I did have some speeding tickets because I've been driving since I was 16, and you get speeding tickets sometimes, especially if you move around a lot, and there's no excuses. You're young and you're not always thinking about the consequences of your actions. So sometimes you might think that a speeding ticket's not really gonna ever pop up in your life again, and then it ends up popping up in your life again. So it's important that you write down as much as you can remember. And the problem is that with me, like, I couldn't really remember everything. So I went ahead and filled out this form to the best of my knowledge. And one thing that I would say that was like a mistake that I made was I didn't go there beforehand knowing every single thing that I've ever experienced. Like, I didn't go there knowing like, oh, I need to remember this speeding ticket that I got, and I need to remember, oh, this time that I went to the hospital, and I need to remember like, oh, this technically counted as an ER visit, because I went there after hours or whatever. So there were a lot of things where like I just forgot about them, and I was like, oh, I should probably like mention this after I had already left his office. And so I did try to reach out to him and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about my paperwork before I go to MEPS. And he said, oh, well, I'm actually like in Boston. Like, you can just tell them at MEPS whatever you got to tell them or whatever. So I was like, okay, sounds good. So now fast forward, I woke up at about like 2:50 and then laid in bed for a little bit. And then I got up around 3, made breakfast, printed out anything that I needed, made sure I had all of my documents in order. You have to have your birth certificate, your driver's license, your social security card is really important. Don't forget that. Also, for those of you who are a little bit younger, who might not know this, make sure that you memorize your social security number, because some of the kids that were there who were like 17, 18, we did have some 17-year-olds, 17 or 18, they didn't know that they had to have their social security card number memorized. So make sure, if you don't already know your social security number, make sure you memorize it. So I got out of my car and walked over. There was a recruiter who had driven a recruit up, who was walking towards the bus too, and I said, hey, I don't really know where I'm supposed to go. And he was like, oh, well, are you here for processing? And I was like, yeah, I think so. I'm here for MEPS. He said, all right, yeah, go on the bus. They're doing a brief. So I got up onto the bus. It was a big dude who was giving a brief, telling everybody, giving them very detailed, explicit instructions on how to walk into the building and how to go through the metal detector and how to put your bag through the x-ray machine and how to put your keys and your phone into the little blue bins. And he was very, very like strict about it. And to me, it was just like, okay, this is just going to be like going through the airport, which is exactly what it was. But what I realized is that a lot of these people are people fresh out of high school, or people who maybe have never taken a flight before, and so they don't know, or they've never traveled before, so they don't know how this whole thing works. Maybe they've never been to any place with a metal detector, you know? So get off the bus, walk in a line. I have no problem with it. Some other people struggle a little bit, but they weren't really like too rough on them about that. I get sent over. You have to go and put your bag down in this little room. You can't bring anything with you except for your social security number, your social security card, and any ID that you have. So you put everything except for those two items into a little room, and you take off your jacket. You can't have anything baggy on you or whatever. You go into the room that branches off into all the different offices. So they've got a Navy office, they've got an Air Force office, they've got the National Guard office, they've got like the Army, all of those. They have everything there. And so I went into the Navy office and I said, "Hi, I'm Molly." And the lady who was in uniform, she was sitting there and she said, "Oh, you're my officer candidate?" And I said, "Yes, I'm your officer candidate." And so she said, "Okay, great, that makes my job easy." So she just takes this little sticker and hands it to me and says, "Put it on your right hand side, on your chest. Make sure that everything's correct on it." I said, "Yep, everything looks correct on there." You have to make sure that your name is spelled correctly, because they tell you if your name is spelled incorrectly, it's going to be by like one letter. And so you really have to check and make sure that they didn't put an I where an L is supposed to be, or they didn't put like an N where an H is supposed to be, because everything's in all caps. So you just need to really make sure that everything is correct. From there, you walk out, and I was told to go wait by a door. And then once the person who was in front of me went over to the front desk, then I was instructed to go over to the front desk. Walked over to the front desk, and the guy who was there said, "Oh, are you my officer candidate?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, I can talk to you like a human being." And I said, "Okay." I was a little bit taken aback by that, but I understand that I'm older, so I'm a little bit better at following instructions than maybe kids who have never done any paperwork or anything like this before. This kind of came up a lot where people were not able to follow instructions, or they didn't understand the instructions or something like that. Things that I, as someone who has done my taxes and bought a home and adopted a dog and had a baby, like I have a lot of experience with filling out paperwork and making sure everything is up to date. You know, I did my own FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid when you go to your undergrad or when you go to grad school. Any time that you want to get any sort of federal assistance or anything like that for school, you have to fill this out. A lot of people have their parents do it for them. I did it myself, so I have a lot of experience with paperwork, and a lot of these kids did not have that experience. So when they were instructed to do something, sometimes they would do it incorrectly. So I think that's more what he was talking about. It's like, oh, you've gone to college, you filled out forms, like I can talk to you like a normal person because you're unlikely to just screw everything up. Not to say that they shouldn't be treated like human beings, because everybody who's, you know, a human being should be treated like a human being. But I started to notice that they were kind of distinguishing me from the other recruits who were younger. There were some enlisted recruits that were older who were also treated a little bit more, they were treated a little bit more respectfully, because it was clear that they knew how to do the things that they were being asked to do, which again is just paperwork. So whether you're going for officer or enlisted, no matter what, just make sure that you really listen to the instructions. If they tell you to fill something out in pencil, fill it out in pencil. If they tell you to fill something out in pen, fill it out in pen. They will provide you with everything that you need to accomplish the task that they are assigning to you. So you just have to listen. You can't drift off. It's super early in the morning for a lot of people, so a lot of these kids were tired. But regardless, like if they tell you to put a check mark instead of an X, don't put an X down. You know, stuff like that. So I walk up to the desk. He tells me to put my right index finger onto the fingerprint scanner, scan my right fingerprint, scan my left fingerprint, doing the same thing on my index finger, then go around to this corner, look into a camera while he takes my picture. He had me step forward a couple of times, and then he had me step forward. There was a counter that was right there that had a sharp corner. And so I continued to step forward until the corner was pressing into my abdomen. And I said, okay, there's a corner pressing into my abdomen. And he said, okay, you don't have to step forward anymore. You can step back if you want to. And I said, okay, I'm going to step back a little bit. So just a lot of communication. A lot of orders are given to you because it's a military installation and it's a military so one of the things that they actually tell you at one point is don't take anything personally. They're there to give you orders, and you're there to follow their orders. So they're not going to be excessively polite. They're not going to say, please, can you take a seat? They're going to say, take a seat right here. Take a seat right here. They're not going to say, hey, did you hear me or anything? No, take a seat right here. That's like how it works. Okay, so got picture taken. Went into the briefing room. You sit down, and a senior chief actually walks in. A naval senior chief comes in, and he tells you how everything is going to go. He says, this room is the only room where pictures can be taken. It's the place where people swear in and do their oath of enlistment and all of that. Some people are going to be swearing in that day. Some people have to go and take an ASVAB. Some people have to just go to medical. Some people have to just do one thing or another thing. And everything that you have to do, they're going to tell you exactly what you have to do and where you have to go. So he tells you at that point that you should not take anything personally, but that if you feel like somebody is being excessively rude or harassing or something like that, that you can go and talk to him or you can go and talk to somebody else. If you feel like somebody is sexually harassing you, there are multiple ways that they can handle it depending on whatever the victim is most comfortable with. You can create a police report if you need to, but if you don't feel comfortable like doing all of that, you can also just go and talk to this lady who is like this counseling lady or something. She's like a former lieutenant commander, something. But he really stresses, the senior chief really stresses that reporting someone for sexual harassment will not prevent you from getting into the military. I didn't see anything. I don't think anybody had any problems in our thing. But yeah, so they tell you all that. They tell you that you need to be respectful. This is basically kind of like you should treat it as though it's like a job interview. We file out, we head down to medical. And while I was walking down the hallway, somebody who was in the Army came up to me and said, "Are you my officer candidate?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, go to the front of the line." And so I walked over to the front of the line, and somebody else was standing there who was in a white lab coat, and that person said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I was told by the Army guy to come to the front of the line because I am the officer candidate." And he said, "Good for you, remind me to throw you a party later." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "You can have a seat." And I said, "Okay." So I sat down. And then it was basically like musical chairs at that point. So one person would get up and go to the desk to receive their folder. The folders are different colors, but the colors didn't really seem to mean anything. Some were green, some were red, some were yellow. I think there were blue ones too. I got a green folder. On your name tag, there's also like a colored sticker. It could be red or it could be yellow. And then at the top it says like which branch you're trying to get into. Some people had Army, mine said Navy. So I got up to the desk and the guy told me to verify that my social security number was correct on all of the stickers, and then to write my phone number on the back of a sheet and to write my name on the back of a sheet. And then he put a sticker onto one of the pages in this little file, and then he handed it to me, and I was instructed to go to room number 4 and have my blood pressure taken. So I went to that room, and I started to have my blood pressure taken. Some people were sent to the room next door, which is where they do the vision test. While I was in the room to have my blood pressure taken, another person in a white lab coat came in and said, "Hey, can you come, or are you my officer candidate?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Can you come here with me?" And I said, "Okay." So I go into the vision room, and they have a booklet that's a color blind test. And what it is it's a bunch of circles that have, each circle is made up of a bunch of very small colored dots, like a bunch of green dots. And then in the center of those green dots are some orange dots or some yellow dots or something like that make a number, and your job is to say whatever that number is that's in the center. So it's a whole bunch of, there's like 14 pages, and you just say whatever the number is. So he said, have you ever met me before? And I said, no. And he said, all right, I want you, and he pointed to a young man who was going as an enlisted member in the Army. That's what he was trying to go for. And he was standing there, and he said, all right, I want you to watch her do this, because it's very rare for women to be colorblind. So that's going to be like a magic trick. So go ahead. So he starts flipping through the book, and I tell him what all the numbers were really fast because I'm not colorblind and I could see them. And then when I was done, he looked over at the kid and he said, see how she was able to do that very quickly and very easily. And she can see these colors and you can't see them. And the kid was just dumbfounded and sad and shocked. And I think that kid just discovered, like, right then that he's colorblind. On the MEPS sheet, there's something on there about being colorblind, and it says in parentheses, Army only. Maybe there are some jobs that you can be colorblind in and be fine in, but I feel like they wouldn't have that on the form. So he looked a little surprised and sad, and the doctor said, all right, well, since you just did this test, I'm going to sign off on your colorblind thing. So he signed off on it really quickly. I went back into the room, got my blood pressure taken, and then then I was instructed to go out into a room and sit in the seat. And then other people were instructed to sit in these other seats. And then somebody else came out and said, hey, all of my windows stay out here, and then everybody who is not a window, go into this other room. And we're looking around like, we don't know what a window is, what it means to be, quote, a window. So he saw that he had not explained that to us yet, and so he just pointed at all of us who he deemed us to be not a window. I think what it actually means is anybody who was waiting at the window of each of those offices, they were going to stay there, and then the rest of us we're going to go into the medical briefing room. So in the medical briefing room, they tell you, okay, anything that you have ever said up to this point doesn't matter. As long as you are honest right now about everything, you're good. So for me, I was thinking, okay, like, maybe I didn't put down that I was hit by a car when I was, 13 years old. I should probably put that down now. Literally every single thing, I was like, fudge, I can't remember exactly when, this speeding ticket was. Like, I don't have this date, or like, I can't find this record or whatever. So I was like, I'm just going to put everything down. So I put every single thing. I put down the complications that had happened during when I gave birth, just every single thing. And I was like, all right, that's like literally as honest as I can possibly be. There was some stuff from like back when I was 5 years old that I was like, I gotta put that down. Because what they tell you is if you knowingly falsely enlist, meaning you enlist under false pretenses, i.e. you say something that you know for a fact is not true. Like you say that you've never, fudge, I don't know. You say that you've never fainted before or something. And then as it turns out, like there's a medical record somewhere that says that you have fainted before. Technically, you have falsely enlisted or whatever. So you can be in the military for 4 years and then have to get like a top secret clearance or something like that. And they do like a much more thorough background investigation on you than they did just for like a secret clearance or something. They find this, they realize that you were not truthful at MEPS, and you can be kicked out, you can be sent to prison depending on what it is, all kinds of stuff. So I was just like, I gotta put every single thing down that I can possibly remember and like just like freaking hope that I didn't mess anything up here. And so the other thing is they're gonna look at your whole body. They're going to look at all of your skin from head to toe. They're going to look at everything. So if you have any sort of like self-destructive behaviors, or if you let anybody do anything that's like destructive to you and you don't mention that, they're going to see it. They're going to say like, oh, why do you have this like whip mark or whatever? Like, I don't know, like whatever. Or a burn mark or something, like, oh, you have all of these scars that like really look like you're a cutter or something like that. Like, they're gonna know right away everything. So I put everything down that I could remember. And even then, like, there was stuff that I forgot. For example, like, I have a scar. I don't know if you guys can see it. I have a scar right here. I don't know if you can see that. This one's for my cat. But I have a scar right here. There you go. You can kind of see there's like a little chink right there. I have a scar because there, kind of, yeah, like right there. From when I was like 14 years old, I was at the zoo and I was with my best friend, and she wanted me to take a picture of this jaguar. She wanted me to get a real close-up picture because it was laying right against the fence and there was this black railing. So me, as this little kid, I climbed over that black railing and I took a picture, and then we left, came back. She was like, I really want to touch that jaguar, but I'm scared. And I was like, I'm brave. I'm 14. Like, this is so good. I climbed over the black railing, and I reached out to touch this jaguar, this wild animal in the zoo. And the other one comes across, like, it was like, I don't know, like 10, 20 yards away. And it covers that distance in like a second. Shoves its massive paw through this tiny ass chain link fence, just fucking punches right through it and hooks me. It's on its hind legs and it hooks me, and it got me right here. So I have survived being attacked by a jaguar. It hooked me right here. I grabbed my hand. I was looking right at it, yanked my hand down. My skin split up and open because what I was trying to do was unhook the jaguar's claw from it, but I couldn't like unhook it. So I looked at it and I just yanked my hand straight down. But I had forgotten about that because that was a long time ago. And so when she came across this scar, she was like, well, what's this scar from? And I said, oh, I was attacked by a jaguar. And she was like, what? And so I had to tell her this whole story because I forgot to put it down on that MEPS questionnaire. So I wasn't trying to conceal anything, but like, I just forgot. And I didn't go to the hospital or anything. There's no record of it anywhere. But she saw the scar on my hand. Yeah, I was attacked by a jaguar. I was a really stupid kid. A black jaguar. You need to know what every single scar on your body is from. You need to mention any piercing that you have, like if there's a mark from it. For example, I got my belly button pierced when I was 18 years old and then took it out, like by the time I was 19, I think. And so there's a scar there. So she had asked me, she's like, what piercings do you have? And I was like, oh, well, I have 2 piercings here and then 2 piercings here. And, but you don't go there with your earrings in. So you just have to say that. And then it's like, oh yeah, I also had my belly button pierced, like, and I took it out, but there's a scar there, and she did see the scar. So, anyway, so I was as honest as I could possibly be about everything. Fortunately, like, I'm not really like a bad kid, so like, I had consumed alcohol before, but like, I wasn't like worried that anybody was gonna see anything about like, you know, I knew that I wasn't going to pop for anything. Like, I just don't do stuff. So, I think some of the kids, maybe had, like, tried pot or something. And, I think in boot camp, they have, like, this little, like, question thing where they're, like, it's, like, the moment of truth or something where in boot camp they ask you, like, have you ever done anything? And, like, they, like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have any advice for that. I think that as long as you're just honest from the get-go, that you'll be fine. Like, and if you don't get in because of something that you said, it's better that you didn't get in and you go to a branch where you can get in with whatever it is that you've done, rather than lying about it and having it potentially coming back and biting you in the ass. Okay, so after we fill that out, you have to fill out your criminal history in pencil, and you fill out your health history in pen. They're 2 different things. The pink sheet, it's like a bubble sheet, a Scantron type sheet, where you fill in like if you've ever been arrested, or if you've ever been suspended from school, if you've ever been kicked out of school, if you've ever I don't know, if you've ever like been fired from a job or something like that. Oh, and by the way, if you've you don't have to be put into handcuffs to be arrested. Fortunately, I have lived a pretty law-abiding life. I have gotten a couple parking tickets. I have gotten a couple of speeding tickets. Fortunately, all of my stuff is paid, so I don't really have to worry about that. I've never had a suspended license or anything like that. And just so you guys know, like, there are people who have gotten their license suspended. There are people who have been arrested and spent the night in jail. There were people who have DUIs. There are people who have gone to prison for like domestic violence and stuff. And as long as you get a waiver, and as long as let's say it was like 5 years ago or 7 years ago or whatever, and like you've been good ever since, or even if it's only been like 3 years ago, like as long as for the job that you are applying for, as long as they will accept a moral waiver, you can still get into the military. Again, I can't stress this enough. I feel like I've been talking for like 15 minutes about this, but if you have any history, put it down. Anything that there's a record for, they can get you on. If there's a police report anywhere, if there's a medical record anywhere, make sure that you say yes to it. Forward. Walked out of that room and then went straight to urinalysis. The females were put into one room and the males were sent to another room. And a nurse came in and said, "Who's ready to pee?" And I said, "Me." And another girl said, "Me." And so she took the two of us into this 2-stall bathroom. Doors were to be kept open while you're peeing. Do not flush the toilet until she tells you to flush the toilet. You pee into the cup, fill it up, bring it to her, hand it to her, hand the lid to her. Then she does for female, she does a pregnancy test in front of you, tells you if you're pregnant or not. Both I and the girl who was with me, we both were negative. We were not pregnant. And then she has you sign over possession of your urine to the MEPS people, and then she puts a little sticker on it and hands it over to the urinalysis lab. From there, you walk back out, and I went and did blood. Next, they tell you if you are queasy or feel like you might faint with the blood, let them know so that they can have like 2 people come and hold you. I said, nope, I'm fine. So I sat down and did the blood, stood up, and then I went over to the vision room where I had done the colorblind test, but they had a different test that I was going to be doing because the doctor had already signed off on my colorblind test. What you do is first you do a depth perception test. So you have chunks of circles. You have a chunk of 5 circles, so 5 columns, and there are 3 rows. So you have a total of 15 circles in group A, and then you have the same thing in another chunk, in another section, group B, C, D, and E. What you have to do is you have to look in there and first confirm that you can see all the circles, making sure that the machine's working right. And then what you do is going from left to right, you imagine that the circles are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you have to decide which circle is different. So the nurse can help you on group A, but from that point, you're on your own. Once you get through group C with a perfect score, you've passed and you don't have to keep going. I was already on group like D. I was on the second row of group D, and she's like, "Oh, you like passed a while ago. Like you can stop." And I said, "Oh, are you sure it's not gonna like mess me up or anything?" And she's like, No. Like I wouldn't do you like that. Like you've already passed it. It's just a pass fail. It's not a score thing at all." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So when I looked in, just so you guys know what mine said, I don't know if it's different for everybody, but for mine, I think the first circle that was like, you have to try to decide which circle is closer to you. So for me in group A, row 1, it was the 3rd circle, like 1, 2, 3. Oh, this circle looks like it's kind of standing out more to me than the other ones. I don't remember the other ones after that. I don't want to give any like wrong information, but for me, the first row was the 3rd circle was the one that popped out to me. Some people failed that, but not all jobs require you to have perfect depth perception. So, take it or leave it. From there, what you had to do was with your right eye, you're going to look forward, and you're going in this little like microscope looking thing. You look forward and you read whichever, like the smallest line that you can read comfortably, that's the line that you read. And so starting with number 1, it's like a really big line, and then each line gets progressively smaller. So like line 9 is pretty small, line 9 alpha is even smaller. It goes all the way to like line 18 or something like that. I don't know. So I did line 9 alpha. I read it from left to right. And then I did the same thing with my left eye from left to right. What that does is it checks your distance ability to read, and then what you do is with your right eye looking straight down, it checks your ability to read things that are close to you. And I read line 9 alpha again, and then in my left eye looking down, I was like, oh, I actually think that I can read line 10 a little bit better. So I read line 10, and I got a perfect score on everything. And so the nurse said, okay, so looking forward, like looking at distance, both eyes are 20/20 vision. So read line, or for me, at my station, I did it December 20th of 2018 at the Springfield MEPS station. That's kind of redundant, MEPS station. Line 9 alpha, if you did it perfectly, that meant that you had 20/20 vision. Because I did in my left eye looking closely, because I did line 10 and I got a perfect score on it, technically in my left eye looking at things that are close to me, I actually have better than perfect vision. So if the number on top, which is 20, is greater than the number that's on bottom, 2017, that means that you have better than perfect vision, whatever the average perfect vision is. So I guess my eyes are a little bit different when I'm looking at things that are close to me. My left eye is a little bit better at seeing things. So I did really well on that. And then after that, I went into the room where I had my blood pressure taken, and they have a little booth area. It's like a little separate room that's all soundproof and stuff, and you walk in and that's your hearing test. And so I was instructed to go to a seat, like they have like little curtains that you pull, and mine was number 5. So I sat down, and they have a little headset, and it's a red earpiece for the right ear and a blue for the left ear, and then you have a little kind of clicker button that you pull on. And the guy came over and he said, okay, this is simulating noise, this is simulating clicking, so when you hear a series of beeps, you're going to click to make the beeping stop. So the first time you hear the click, or the first time you hear a beep, you want to click it as soon as you can. So it'll go like beep, beep, beep. You want to try to get it when it goes beep, beep, like before it even gets to the second one. So what happens is it started in my left ear, and it started at kind of like a normal pitch and a normal volume. It went beep, and I clicked right away, and then it got softer. The volume started to decrease. I went beep, beep, beep. And it like, sometimes I was like, is it happening? And if I was unsure, I just clicked anyway. It's not really that big of a deal if you like over-click. They might have you do it again, but I didn't have to do it again. And then after it gets really, really soft, so like you can barely hear it, like you click it, then it goes to a higher pitch. So if it was like beep, then it's suddenly going to go beep. And the same thing happens, and it does that, and it gets higher and higher and higher, and soon it's like, is that my ear ringing, or is it like the beep? And so it doesn't matter if you think it's your ear ringing or not, you just click the damn thing. Like it'll go beep, beep, and you click it, and then it'll be silent for a while. And then you'll be like, beep, beep, and so you click it, and you're like, okay, I got this. And then after all of that, the same thing happens on your right ear. You do the same thing over and over again. So I walked out, and he said, oh, are you my officer candidate? And I said, yes, I'm your officer candidate. And he said, oh, you did really, really well. And I was like, thank you. And then the other 5 people, because there were 6 stations in that booth, the other people were like, what? And he was like, oh, you guys all passed. And so I was like, okay. Then from the hearing test, I went back into the place where I had done the urinalysis, and I met one-on-one with a physician, and she went through every single thing on my every single thing that I had answered yes to, because there were things that I had answered yes to while at the MEPS location that were different from what I had answered to my recruiter. She wanted to have more paperwork. So she said, well, I'm not going to send you home. I'm going to finish everything, but we're not going to fully process you just yet until we get all of the medical records that we need. We're just going to get some of the records from like your hospital. So they needed some of my stuff. So I was like, all right, sounds good. She asked me if I was a vegetarian, and I said yes, and she said, are you an anemic vegetarian? And I said, I don't know. And she said, well, we'll find out. It'll show up in your blood work. And so she took my blood pressure again to make sure that it was good, even though they had taken my blood pressure before. When they had taken my blood pressure before, we had just been like kind of walking around, and then, you're really nervous, and so my blood pressure was a little bit higher. It was kind of like right on the border. So when she took my blood pressure in her office manually, it was back down, and it was like well within normal limits by then. So she was like, okay, I'm very happy with that. And so they tell you about how you have to do like the duck walk and stuff. I did not have to do that. And I didn't have to strip down to my underwear in front of other people. It was just me and this female physician. And she did leave the room and instruct me to strip down to my underwear. The rules are you can't have nail polish. You can't have any piercings in. You can't have makeup on. You can't like cover any of your tattoos. If you have any Band-Aids on, you're going to have to like pull them off so they can see what's under the Band-Aid. You can't wear lacy undergarments. So if you have a bra, it can't have lace on it. If you have underwear that are lacy, they're going to send you home. If you have underwear that is not full coverage, it has to cover your whole butt, meaning no thongs, no G-strings. If you don't do that, you're going to be sent home. I had asked beforehand if I could wear little boy shorts. They're like these little, almost like Spanx, except they're not Spanx. They don't like go up to your belly button or anything like that. Like they sit on your hips and they sit, they're actually like workout, like Spankies actually, cheerleading Spankies. They're kind of like that, except they're a little bit more flexible. They don't like pinch really. I got them from Champion, who is like an athletic gear provider. I got them actually way before, and I said, hey, can I just wear these? And they were like, yeah, that's fine. So I just had on a regular bra. They tell you not to wear a sports bra because it will impede their ability to like look at your spine as they have you do these different movements. So don't wear a sports bra. Wear just a regular bra that has a clasp in the back, no racer backs, just a bra. It can't be like a halter or anything. It just has to have two straps right here in the front that go over, no crossing or anything, and attach back in the back, just a regular bra that clasps in the back. It doesn't matter how many clasps in the back. It can have 2, 3, 1, whatever. It just has to be a regular bra. It preferably can't have too much padding into it. You don't want your tits to be up to your face. Nothing like that. And then, so what she had me do was I had to first, while I was in my bra and underwear, lift my arms up and lift my arms down, or bring my arms back down, up, down, kind of do this, have my hands touch, and then touch. And then what I had to do was go and stand in a corner, have my back to the corner, go up onto the balls of my feet, which is this part of your foot, not quite on the toes, on the balls of your feet. And I had to take 5 steps. Then I had to turn around while I was on the balls of my feet. Then I had to rotate down to the heel of my foot. Yes, these are Batman socks. I had to go onto the heel of my foot and take 5 steps towards the corner and then turn around while still on the heels of my feet. Then what I had to do was go onto the balls of my feet and drop down really quickly, and then come back up, and then drop back down, and then come back up, drop back down, come back up, and do that once more. I had to do it, I think, 4 times. And what they're listening for is how much cracking your joints have when you do these fast movements. Then what I had to do was make your foot go straight down, and you need to hyperextend your knee. So you do that a few times, hyperextend, and then you repeat going backwards. And you do that a few times. Then you repeat with your left side. So the squats are, you're on the balls of your feet and you just kind of drop as low as you can and back up without putting your heels back on the ground. And you drop down again. And back up. And you drop down again. And it's making sure that you can be on the balls of your feet without falling over. The whole walking on your heels thing. You have to, it's called the ortho neuro exam. Just make sure that you can be balanced. Something else that I had to do was I had to bend over and touch my toes, keeping my feet together. So you go down as far as you can. Not everybody can touch their toes. They're not going to disqualify you for that. Oh, I had to do the swan dive thing. What the swan dive looks like is you have to get up onto the balls of your feet. Get up onto the balls of your feet. Put your hands together. And then, make sure that you guys can see this. I'm going to stay up on the balls of my feet. Put your hands together. I'm on the balls of my feet, just so you know. And just immediately throw your arms out like this. Just like that. And you have to stay up until she lets you get down. She has you move your arms around, going both directions, making sure you have a full range of motion. Clap, 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 clap. All this stuff. She did not have me do anything with my neck. Oh, but what I did have to do, which I knew was coming, but it still sucked when I had to do it. This doesn't feel so great, just so you guys know. It's going to be on a hard floor. What you have to do is you have to start on the balls of your feet. You have to drop down, and then you have to fall on your knees. Now, it's not a far fall, but it's on a hard concrete floor. Then, see how the balls of my feet are still touching the ground? I don't know if you can see that. So then what you have to do is you have to put your feet down. You have to get up and take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. And then you have to rock back. And you have to stand up in one motion, keeping yourself on the balls of your feet until she tells you to come down. So she asks you if that hurt, and you say, well, it didn't feel great, but it didn't hurt too much. It was just mostly uncomfortable. Okay, so after you stand back up, after having done the knee drop, then what she says is that she's gonna leave the room. You are to take off your bra and your underwear, put it on the chair, which has like a little paper towel on it, and then she's going to come back in with a chaperone. You have a gown that you are to put on with the back part as the open part, so you're covered in the front, but it's open in the back, and then there's a sheet where you sit on the exam table and you put the sheet over your knees. What they do from there is they're going to shine a light in your eyes, make sure that your pupils dilate, and then, first she turns off the light so that your pupils dilate, and then she holds the light, and then she looks all the way through your pupil into the back of your eye. Then she checks your ears and makes sure that your ears are clean. What I recommend beforehand is taking a shower either the morning of or the night before to make sure that your ears are clean. My ears were fine, but not everybody's ears are always fine from what I've heard. And if your ears are too dirty, they could say, oh, you've got like potentially an ear infection and you can't be here for this. So you have to wait until your ear infection clears up or something. So make sure your ears are clean. She had me take a couple of deep breaths while she held a stethoscope and listened to the front of my chest, and then she listened to the back of my chest. She had me rotate a little bit, make sure that my spine was working fine. Then she had me lie down, and then she had me, instead of taking deep breaths through my mouth, which is how the first part was done, she had me breathe normally through my nose. Then what she did was she had the sheet over my knees and all the way up to my hips, and she had me pull my gown up from where it was, which was about down to my knees, and then the sheet was over my knees, pull the gown up so that it went all the way up to just under my boobs. And she listened and did some tapping. She did a tap exam, make sure that all of my organs sounded okay and weren't doing anything weird, making sure that there was no pain. She also had checked my lymph nodes beforehand. She tapped the top of my head and different areas to check my sinuses. Again, I have a little bit of a cold that I was kind of getting over. I'm still kind of actually sick. She did tell me that she could send me home because I came with a cold, but that she wasn't going to, because she knows, like, you can't always, like, it's winter time, like, people get colds, that's just something that happens. She asked me if I got a flu shot yet, and I said, no, I'm supposed to, haven't done it yet, and she's like, well, it's a little too late now, and I was like, yeah, I know, but, like, I should probably still get one, gotta go get one. She said that I'm going to need to get certain records because I've had an abnormal pap smear before. So, guys, this is probably too much information, but for girls, if you've ever had an abnormal pap smear, you need to make sure that all of your pap smears since the abnormal one, whatever it was, if you got treatment for it, or like let's say you had to get like a colposcopy or a LEEP or anything else to remove the abnormal cells, ever since then you need to have proof that you've had normal pap smears. And like all of my pap smears have been normal. I've had a baby since then. Everything's been fine. And the thing is, she's going to get all of those records. So even if I were lying to her at that point, she was going to find out eventually. Sometimes people forget things, like I had forgotten to mention what happened here, you know, the whole thing with that. She asked if I had ever had any self-destructive behaviors, like cutting myself, and I was like, no, but I do have this scar here, and, oh, well, she asked me about it, but I have, well, I don't even think you can see it, it's right here, maybe you can see like a hint of it kind of going right up there, that's a cat scratch. I have another one that's right here. I don't know if you can see that. That's also kitty scratch. I have cats. Well, I have one cat now, but I've had other cats before. So yeah, she asked about some of the scars on my neck. I have this really gnarly scar on my elbow. Well, you actually can't really see it in this. Here you go. Yeah. So there's some discoloration. I was hit by a car, so I had to tell her about that. Again, a lot of this stuff was already on my sheet, but I needed to make sure that I have everything. So then, after all of that, she looked down in my pelvic region. It was not any sort of internal exam, like they don't touch anything, they just look and say, oh, yep, you're female. Okay, just making sure. So that's it, and then they tell you they're going to leave the room, and then you're going to put your clothes back on, and then that was it. Walk out, get height and weight done. Height and weight, I was well within the limits, but if you are not well within the limits, let's say you're a male and you are overweight, what they do instead is they measure your waist and then they measure your neck and they look at the ratio between the two, and as long as, let's say you're a bodybuilder and you're not very tall but you're very, very heavy, you will be technically overweight according to your BMI, your body mass index, which is your height to weight ratio, to make sure that you're actually just in really good shape and you're really dense. They'll do the neck test and just make sure that you're within their regulations. After that, the other girls, they did have to go and do, since the other girls were enlisted girls, they did have to strip down and they had to do like the duck walk and all of that. I wasn't there for that part. They sent me back to the naval office because I had to call my health clinic and have them fax over my medical records. In order to do that, what you have to do is you have to call them. They tell the people at MEPS where to fax a records request form. Then I have to write my name, my date of birth, and I have to sign the form. The form then gets faxed to your health clinic from the MEPS people, and then they send the records back to you. From there, they told me that I could go and get lunch. Because I'm a vegetarian, they had a vegetarian option available for me. The people who ate meat, they had either chicken or I think some kind of ham or like a beef option or something. All of the sandwiches were cold sandwiches though. They didn't heat them up, and apparently the bread was really hard, but I didn't have that. I had a salad. They I will not say that it was a totally vegan option. For those of you who are wondering, it was just vegetarian, because the dressing options were either a balsamic reduction, or like a ranch dressing or something. In the salad, there wasn't any cheese. It was just lettuce, tomato, cucumber. But I will say that it was a salad that was better than what you would get from like a gas station, but not much better than what you would get from a gas station. But it was a little bit better. They also had a little bag of chips. You get Lay's plain chips, and then you get an orange, and then you get a little packet of cookies. The cookies are not vegan, but they are vegetarian. And then you get a bottle of water. And when you're sitting there, you have no idea what time it is, because you don't have your phone. You're not allowed to wear a watch. There's no clocks except in like one room, which is the room that is in the center of all of the offices. So if you want to know what the time is, you have to go to that room. So I asked the guy who gave me my lunch, how long do I have to sit in here? And he said, well, until somebody comes and finds you, or you can just, don't scarf your food down, eat, and then whenever you're ready, just go unless somebody comes and asks for you. And I said, okay, sounds good. So then from there, I ate my lunch. They did have a TV on. It was playing Fox News. And then after I was done eating, I went into that center hub where all of the other offices branch off of. And then after sitting there for a while, they did have like the Oxygen channel on. It was like Chicago PD or something was on the TV. It's kind of like being at the DMV. They also had magazines that were there. A lot of them were like Military Spouse magazine or GI Jobs magazine or something. You're not allowed to bring a book with you. You're not allowed to have your cell phone. So you're just kind of sitting there, just kind of either talking to some of the other people or just kind of like waiting or whatever. You're not allowed to sleep. They do have board games though. There were some kids who were playing Battleship. There were some kids who were playing cards. They were playing Uno. Some people were reading magazines. I just popped open a magazine, and then I was kind of half watching the TV, and then I went and sat with some of the girls when they came into the room and was just kind of chatting with them. And then I went and was instructed by somebody else to just let the Navy office know that I was there. So I said, okay. So I went over and I knocked on the door, and you knock twice. And then they tell you to enter, so you open the door, and you say, hey, I'm here. And then they said, okay, we're going to send you to the front desk to get fingerprints. And I said, okay, for security clearance is what they said. So I went back to the front desk, and they said, the guy who was sitting there, he was the one who had been there from the get-go. I said, I've been instructed to come to you and tell you that I need to get fingerprints for a security clearance. And he said, okay, sounds great. So he went and got this piece of paper, had me verify my social security number, then go down a hallway, first door on the right, walk in and tell them that I'm there for fingerprints for a security clearance. So I said, okay. And I went, found the guy. His name was Bill. He had like some things up on the wall from his grandkids. And he said, oh, okay, you're my officer candidate. I said, yes. And he said, okay, let's come over here. So go and do fingerprint. Oh, first he had me go and wash my hands. He said, use ice cold water and wash your hands with soap for 15 seconds, making sure that you keep the water on ice cold. So I did that. I came back. He touched my hands. He said, wow, you really did use the ice cold water. And I said, yep. And then he said, okay. So then he had me put all my four fingers onto this little fingerprint reader and hold still. And he said, don't flex your fingers or anything, just put them on and I will guide your hand. Just totally relax your hand. And so I said, okay. So I totally relaxed my hand. He put my fingers down onto the reader. Then you do your thumb and you roll your thumb from left to right on your right hand. Then you do each finger from left to right on your right hand. Then on your left hand, you repeat the process, but instead of rolling from right to left, you roll from left to right. And do that. The machine had an issue with my thumb, so instead of rolling my thumb at the end from right to left, he did end up rolling it from left to right. And then he said, okay, we've got everything that we need. You're good to go. So then I was instructed to go back to the front desk or go back to the office and give them the sheet that said that I saw that my fingerprints were submitted. And so I went back to the naval office and I went in and I said, I've been instructed to tell you that I've seen that my fingerprints have been submitted to you. And they said, okay, great. You're free to do whatever you want. I went home. So Overall, everyone was really nice to me, or not. I wouldn't say really nice. I would say they were probably nicer to me than somebody who's a lot younger, somebody who's maybe fresh out of high school, somebody who doesn't know how to answer questions or how to do everything correctly. For example, there were people who had difficulty doing the breathalyzer test, because at one point we did have to all do a breathalyzer exam. Some people put the wrong end towards the guy, and he said, well, I don't want to touch where your mouth is going to go, and you don't want me to touch where your mouth is going to go. So some people had trouble with that. There were several people who had trouble with doing a check mark instead of an X. There were several people who had trouble with filling out the paper in pencil instead of in pen, the pink Scantron sheet. And, you know, with a lot of those people, they might be nice to them the first time they tell them, but then after that, they are no longer nice. So make sure that it's okay if you mess up like one time with a specific instruction, because they know that you're not in the military yet and you haven't had it like trained into you. But if you continue to mess up the same instruction over and over again, they're going to call you out and you're going to be embarrassed, and it's not going to be a good day. So make sure you follow their instructions. If they tell you to sit somewhere, don't sit anywhere else. They have a reason they have you in the chair that you're in, because that chair goes to this particular room, or means that you're at this particular stage, or it means that you're this particular type of recruit. They have a whole system that you know nothing about, so you just need to listen to them and follow their instructions to the T. But yeah, final thoughts were that it was about as positive of an experience as I could have expected. Again, I think they were a little bit nicer to me because I was able to follow their instructions, because I'm an adult who knows how to fill out forms and knows how to stand where I'm told and sit where I'm told. And I'm very good at telling them exactly why I'm bothering them at their desk. And I'm not going to say that I was actually bothering them. It's just if I went up to a desk, I explained what I was instructed to do. I'm good at communicating. So I think that's why they were a little bit nicer to me. If you guys have any questions or any thoughts or anything like that, let me know. You can ask me anything. I will answer anything that I can answer, and I will tell you I don't know if I don't know the answer to it. Okay, let me know if you guys like this video, and I will keep you posted on this whole journey. All right, see ya.